There was once a farmer named Rajan. He lived in a small village in the heart of India, where the mornings smelled of wet earth and wood smoke, and the evenings were quiet, except for the sound of crickets and distant temple bells. Rajan was not a rich man, but he was a content one. He had a small farm, a loving wife, a sturdy ox named Kalu, and a son he was raising to be honest and hardworking. For 30 years, Rajan had lived by one belief, a belief passed down to him by his own father, whispered to him as a child under the shade of an old neem tree. "Son," his father had said, "whatever happens in this life, good or bad, do not be so quick to call it a blessing or a disaster. Wait, be patient. Because in the end, everything happens for a reason." Rajan had never forgotten those words, but on one particular monsoon season, those words would be tested in ways he could never have imagined. It began on a Tuesday morning. Rajan woke before sunrise, as he always did, said his prayers, and walked to the stable to prepare Kalu for the day's ploughing. But when he arrived, the stable door was open. Kalu was gone. Rajan searched for hours. He walked every path, every field, every corner of the village. He asked every neighbor. But the ox had simply vanished, perhaps startled by a storm in the night, and wandered too far to find his way back. When the neighbors heard, they came to Rajan's door. "What terrible luck," they said. "An ox is not easy to replace. How will you plow your fields? How will you survive the season?" Rajan looked at them calmly. "Maybe," he said quietly. "We will see." The neighbors shook their heads and went home, certain that Rajan's harvest was ruined. But 3 days later, something unexpected happened. Kalu returned, and he did not come back alone. Behind him walked 2 wild horses, strong, healthy, and magnificent, that had apparently been traveling with him through the forest. Now Rajan had not 1 animal, but 3. The neighbors came rushing back. "What incredible luck," they said. "You are a rich man now. Those horses are worth a fortune." Rajan smiled gently. "Maybe," he said. "We will see." A week passed. Rajan's son, a young man named Arjun, had always loved horses. From the moment the 2 wild horses arrived, he spent every spare hour with them, feeding them, talking to them, slowly earning their trust. One afternoon, Arjun decided to try riding one. The horse, still wild at heart, reared up suddenly. Arjun fell hard. When Rajan reached him, his son was lying on the ground, his leg broken in 2 places. The neighbors came again. "What terrible luck," they said. "Your son cannot work now. Who will help you on the farm? And those horses, they are dangerous. You should sell them while you still can." Rajan sat beside his son, held his hand, and looked at the neighbors. "Maybe," he said quietly. "We will see." The neighbors exchanged glances and left, certain that Rajan's misfortune was beyond repair. Arjun's leg was set by the village doctor. It would take months to heal. For weeks, Rajan worked the farm alone, rising before the sun, going to bed long after it set. His back ached, his hands bled. But he did not complain. He simply worked, and he waited, and he trusted. 2 months after Arjun's accident, soldiers arrived in the village. They rode in on government horses, carrying official orders. There was a conflict in the northern mountains, they announced. Every able-bodied young man between the ages of 18 and 35 was to be conscripted. They would leave within the week. The village fell silent. Mothers wept. Wives held their husbands. Fathers stood helpless as their sons were taken away, sons who might never come back. One by one, the young men of the village were registered and marched out. But when the soldiers reached Rajan's house and asked for Arjun, they saw the young man lying inside, his leg in a splint, unable to walk. They moved on. Arjun stayed. When the neighbors realized what had happened, they came to Rajan's door a third time. But this time, they did not speak. They simply stood there, eyes wide, beginning to understand something they had never quite believed before. It was Rajan's wife who finally broke the silence. She was standing in the doorway, tears quietly running down her face, not from sadness, but from something else, something deeper. "The ox that ran away," she said softly. "The horses that came, the fall that broke his leg." She looked at her husband. "Every single thing that looked like a disaster." Rajan nodded slowly. "Was a step?" he said. "Just a step." That evening, Rajan sat with Arjun on the small chapai outside their home. The sun was setting over the fields, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, the same colors it had painted for 30 years, the same colors it would paint for 30 more. Arjun was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Baba, how did you always know? How were you never afraid?" Rajan was quiet too for a moment. Then he said, "I was afraid, son. Every time. When Kalu disappeared, I was afraid. When you fell, I was terrified. I am just a man. Fear is natural." "Then how did you stay so calm?" Rajan looked out at the fields. "Because I learned something a long time ago," he said. "I learned that we are not wise enough to know. In the moment something happens, whether it is good or bad, we see only one piece of the picture. But life sees all of it." He picked up a small stone from the ground and held it in his palm. "When this stone was being carved from the mountain," he said, "it did not know it would become the step of a temple. It only felt the chisel." Arjun looked at his father. "So what do we do?" he asked. "When the chisel hurts?" Rajan smiled, the slow, tired, deeply peaceful smile of a man who had learned something the hard way and come out the other side. "You trust," he said. "You do your work, you be kind, and you wait. Because time always reveals what panic never can." There is something that Rajan understood, something most of us spend our entire lives trying to learn. We live in a world that tells us to react. React to every loss, every setback, every door that closes. We are told to worry about it, analyze it, panic about it, post about it immediately, without waiting, without pausing, without giving life even a moment to show us what it is doing. But here is what the great teachers, from the forests of ancient India to the monasteries of China, have always said. The present moment is rarely the whole story. When a seed is buried in the ground, it does not know it is becoming a tree. From the inside, all it feels is darkness and pressure. When a caterpillar dissolves inside its cocoon, it does not know it is becoming a butterfly. From the inside, all it experiences is loss. The complete loss of everything it once was. We are the same. When we lose a job, we do not know that the next door will lead somewhere better. When a relationship ends, we do not know that the space it leaves will eventually be filled with something truer. When we are forced off the path we planned, we do not know that the detour is, in fact, the destination. Patience is not passive. Patience is not giving up. Patience is not telling yourself that nothing matters. Patience is trusting that you are not yet seeing the full picture. It is doing your work with honesty and with care, and allowing life the time it needs to show you what it is building. Rajan never called himself a wise man. He was just a farmer, a man with mud on his hands and faith in his heart. But he understood something that kings and scholars sometimes forget, that the worst thing that ever happened to you may one day turn out to be the very thing that saved you. That monsoon season eventually passed. Arjun's leg healed. The young men who had been taken by the soldiers returned. Some of them changed, some of them broken, all of them grateful to be alive. The 2 wild horses were eventually sold for enough money to repair the farm and build a small addition to the house. Kalu, the old ox who had started everything by wandering away one stormy night, lived for 7 more years, plowing the same fields, unbothered and unhurried. And every evening, until the end of his days, Rajan sat on that small chape outside his home and watched the sunset over his fields. He never grew rich. He never became famous. But people came from neighboring villages to sit with him, to ask him questions, to share their troubles. And whenever they told him about something terrible that had happened, a loss, a failure, a betrayal, Rajan would listen carefully, nod slowly, and say the same thing he had always said. Maybe, he would say gently, "We will see." Because here is the truth that life keeps trying to teach us, if only we are still enough to hear it. You are not at the end of your story. Whatever you are facing right now, whatever loss, whatever closed door, whatever moment of darkness has brought you here today, you are not at the end. You're in the middle. And in the middle of every great story, things always look the worst just before they turn. Trust the process. Do your work, be kind, be patient, and wait, because what looks like a disaster today may one day be the very reason you smile. Everything happens for a reason. You may not see it now, but you will.